Welcome to the Upshift podcast, where changemakers meet and commune and find out how each other is doing their part in changing the world. And today we are joined by Dr. Jodi Vandenberg-Daves. She's a coach and consultant and a former professor with a doctorate in history. She served as a professor and chair of the Department of Race, Gender, and Sexuality Studies at UW-La Crosse, which is a very new umbrella in the academic world that came up more recently, let's say, than in the past when we had history and women's studies. So, Dr. Vandenberg-Daves, welcome,
It
Jodi.
is so great to be here. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, we were talking a little bit before we turned on the camera and about she's done so much. And one thing, she's been an executive director. It's one to be in the academic world, but to also shift over into leading a nonprofit. She was the executive director of the Greater La Crosse Area Diversity Council. She provides leadership for the council's efforts to create diverse and inclusive workplaces. So she had her work cut out for her. And she is also a coach, a consultant, but a coach for women. And I love what she says here: high potential women. They're not high powered yet, they are on their way up. But I'm so curious what you tell a woman, because we talked about being a leader and a mother, and we're going to dive into that. But as a high potential woman, are there warning signs you give these ladies as they're climbing and clamoring to be at the top of their game?
Yeah, it's there. I am a high achieving woman and I know what it feels like to kind of have that internal motor and lots of ideas and lots of directions you want to go and impact you want to make. So there is like a kind of a sense of a need to pace yourself and develop habits of self awareness and develop kind of a network outside of your workplace that grounds you. And I also like to say stay grounded in your values
Mm.
and knowing the value you bring. But that piece about what are my values and trying to stay in alignment with those values. And then being aware of overcommitment, because if you perform pretty well in a variety of arenas, people are going to keep asking you to do more. And being socialized as women, we often have this people-pleasing idea of I'll just keep saying yes, I'll keep saying yes because that'll keep me visible and keep me pleasing people. But we have to know when to draw in our energy and how to continue to develop those habits of reflection to stay tuned into our core contributions and stay focused on our goals, and not get too sidetracked.
Yes, and you said a couple of things there, is to be connected to your self-worth, which is really hard because then you gotta figure out what that is, right?
Yeah.
And then this network, and we're gonna get back to that because I think the network around anybody, what, it doesn't matter if you're a high achiever or not, but that support you need to maybe even remind you sometimes that you're human. And we talked about the culture of urgency. When did that start? And then why is it that women, you say, we say yes, but why is it that men can say no and like, no, man, I don't have time to do that today. But a woman's like, I can add it on. Why is that?
Oh, that's a complicated question. Two complicated questions. The culture of urgency, it's been around for a long time, but as our world has sped up with technology and the idea of 24/7 availability, people don't know how to calm their nervous systems and pull away from any kind of little pull, little nudge to be back in the game and to be have your mind spinning and thinking. And even when things aren't an emergency, I feel like workplace cultures can create that sense of urgency. I don't think there's enough leadership saying all emails do not have to be returned within 2 hours. Like people cannot answer email after work hours. How is that modeled for us? I think is an important piece of how we might calm that down. But I think it also takes people saying, let's be clear about our priorities. We have a lot of things going on here. Do we have to do them all at once? There's sort of a team sport element to mitigating a culture of urgency. And not, there's times that many times that things just simply are urgent. But if we kind of operate it with the idea that they are always urgent and that everything is equally urgent, we get a lot of burnt out people. So that second part of your question, can you say it again?
Why women? Why is it that it seems to be so much easier for men just to say, "No, man, I can't do that today," or they can walk out of the office, but
Mhm.
women feel like they've got to keep going, or is it competition? I mean, what is it? Why? When do we learn this?
I mean, part of it is we are there's some socialization around meeting people's needs. People ask me for a need, I should meet it. My expertise is on motherhood too. They're kind of ever available mother model that women are supposed to be mothers and supposed to be available. But there's also kind of tying into that, there's research showing that to get ahead, women are really supposed to be both competent and nice, and men can just get away with being competent. And
Right.
so being nice feels like saying yes when it was asked instead of negotiating a different deadline. And it's just very easy to get caught up in, more so for women, because there's just sort of different expectations on us often. And I think those are some of the basic points there.
The competence versus nice.
Mhm.
Okay. With women, and you said, we feel like we're natural nurturers. I get that. I love that about women. But this thing about we gotta be mothers, I mean, so then if this crossover happens, am I mothering my team?
Yeah.
For a mother, we do need to be there. I have children, you have children. We do need to be there even when we have 0 energy left. They're crying, they need and it is our job to nurture them almost to our sometimes detriment of energy. We get that. We'll get it back someday. But it spills over because this is so natural for us, spills over into the workplace. When do you tell when do you tell a woman you're mothering your team, or how do you give your people that you're coaching the skills to know the difference, to leave the mother at home and to bring
Mhm.
that competent person to work?
Well, for one thing, I do lift up the skills that are often associated with motherhood and call them skills, so emotional agility, flexible thinking, conflict management, perspective taking, listening. Those are
Mm,
all team building skills.
mhm.
And they are absolutely, you just Google what are the skills that leaders need today. And they are those skills. And they're often undersung. So I like to value those things. And those are relationship building skills. We can call them mothering, we can call them anything, but they're relationship building skills. So I think the thing is about not getting too caught up in everybody else's energy and need. It's partly keeping some boundaries on your time and your availability if you're a leader, and kind of making clear when you are available and times when you're not available, and thinking about how delegation is empowerment for people. You don't want to dump on people, but you can delegate. And if you're in touch with your team, there are ways you can see where people's energy could go in a positive direction for a task that doesn't have to be your task. And so practicing those habits of, how can I delegate this energy around? I also talk about boundaries with our team or with anyone from the perspective of not only being a lot of mindfulness about what you can and can't do and when you are and are not available, but also internal boundaries. And people have different ways of thinking about that. But one of the most valuable ways I've found of thinking about that is the idea of like zipping up your core and holding your energy in. And I can find this very valuable when I was leading meetings in particular, that, there's just so much going on around me with everyone else's energy, and I do wanna keep people happy while also keeping the meeting moving along so people can get on to their next thing. And I found that I could manage to listen well, but still kinda stay centered in myself if I really thought about holding in those internal boundaries and hanging on to what's mine and not getting everyone else's stuff in there.
Mhm.
You get listened to, but I'm not gonna go, like, completely on a tangent with you.
Right. And some people call that intuition, and
Yeah.
I call it the observer also. And when I
Mhm.
teach people in the speaking world or just in any kind of communication type workshop, how to be in themselves, how to keep a touch with how's it going with them. All right, like
Mhm.
I'm starting to feel fatigued or I'm feeling irritated or whatever the feelings are, stay connected to those.
Yeah.
Also connected to the audience or the team or whoever they are conversing with to get a feel. That's hard. This is agility right here, right?
Yeah.
To feel where they're going so then you know how to gauge. Do I push harder here or do I pull back and allow them to kind of sink in, take in what I just said? Ask. I love this. It's like people ask me, how do you do that? I say, ask a question. How
Mhm.
y'all doing? How you feeling? Do you need a break? Do you need to let that sink in a minute? That conversing. How do you train or how do you teach a woman, a leader, to be that agile, to be inside her feelings, like you just said, and outside watching, feeling, because that's a true leadership skill, right? How to move
Yeah.
move everything along, yet stay really connected with what's going on right now instead of just being goal oriented.
Yeah, I think it's practice and kind of getting support from other people and including who are the other people who are in your role who can help you talk about some of the challenges of your particular role. But I think that naming how hard it is important too, and calling it emotional agility and helping it be sort of an upskilling goal to become more emotionally agile. And if it really gets difficult, sometimes I think it makes sense to just focus on an aspect of the meeting that you can sort of be an observer for, an aspect, maybe one person in the meeting. How's that person experiencing this if I can't pay attention to everyone else? Because you're
Mhm.
going to and often meet with the same people again. So maybe you can just get a little nugget about how this is tracking, especially maybe for a person who doesn't seem as comfortable speaking, like what's going on with that person, and not try to track everything at once.
So you've been at this a while, and
Mhm.
tell me now, 2025, looking in 2026, what are you up against? What are your like, you've got a goal and you've got women that you're working with. What do you find the most difficult thing right now to get them over or through or to try to get them to realize?
So when I talk to women about what is going on in their work world, it's often a sense of change and chaos. And, they're just we're managing so many different changes. We have a lot of political chaos going on. I am a huge advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. People are struggling to be agile about even saying those words and enacting those values in their workplaces. And then staying true to values when there's a lot going on around that's hard to shut out. And then change is just really there's this new computer systems coming in. There's reorgs. There's just a real sense of dynamism. Learning to stay grounded in your value and your values, and it's all the more important to set up ways to be intentional about how you approach things, touch points, check-ins with yourself, maybe, a group that you're involved in, a coaching situation, but ways that you can stay true to yourself and stay aligned and remember who you are and the value you bring. That's all the more important when the word is chaos or change all around you.
Mhm. And part of that change is AI.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So how is that affecting your message to these women leaders and these women who are building themselves? AI, where does that how does that working or fitting or competing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's so much that we still need to know about it, but I feel like it's got its useful place, and we have to approach all technologies without too much fear. We have to approach them with a sense of how can this work for me, and I just don't want to get in my fear brain about how it could put me out of a job or destabilize me. But as a writer, I just find it as like an assistant, or as a coach, I find it as a fellow strategist. But I think I know my own value and my own voice well enough to go, well, this is what's useful, and I leave the rest. And if you can claim that knowledge and awareness and confidence around, I know what value I bring, this tool can help me, but I'm not going to let this tool be my voice in the workplace. I'm going to
Right.
have my own voice in the workplace. I think those are a couple big things that are coming up.
So, what is in the future for you? You've written books, you've been a professor, a consultant, coach. What's your now goal?
Create some more intentional community in person in my own community. I would like to work with people who are new to a leadership role and just kind of create some community around sorting out problems across organizations and industry. I would like to work as well and bring my expertise on motherhood and work life issues to maybe create some more programming or online courses or communities around that. And also potentially link it to some of my speaking work is about not just motherhood but also caregiving of elders. So any kind of caregiving and lifting up the leadership that happens with the leadership skills that come from that and that emotional agility and all that, and just really lifting up women's leadership as it's connected to caregiving and to caregiving journeys as they intersect with career journeys. So those are some of the next sort of subject area things I want to do. And yeah, I'm excited. And my book is new, so I'm excited to spread the word about my book. Maybe do some, like a book club or something around it. Lots of potential in 2026.
Yeah, well, tell us about your book. Tell us about
Yeah.
what kind of groups you're gonna to form around it.
Well, the book is called Leading with Courage: Career Long Guide for Idealistic Women. And so it does look at the entire span of a career around really progressive pro social values as a way to both anchor and empower yourself and empower others. I want women to, the leadership literature for women has often been kind of like women get the corner office or nice girls don't get the corner office, and kind of transactional and ladder climbing. And there's nothing wrong with climbing ladders. And I want women at the top of a lot of more ladders, but leadership is anywhere, and so, I'm trying to promote how you think about yourself as a leader, as a young woman, as a mid-career woman, as a later career woman, and promote some intergenerational conversations. So what I'd love to model is how we can have some intergenerational conversations in the workplace. We are at a cultural, historical moment where a lot of our kind of conversation about generations is like, kind of hostile, kind of like, "Oh, the boomers," and, "Oh, the Gen Z," and really, we have so much to learn from one another, and I think particularly as women,
Mm.
older women often just, like, they experience ageism in more profound ways often than men do, and their expertise gets devalued, and younger women need to have their questions honored when they're young, even if they may be asking about doing things differently, and they need allies, and so the kinds of conversations I would love to have would be intergenerational.
I absolutely agree and love that.
Yeah.
In ancient generations, the women gathered, the elders, the
Mhm.
wisdom, and passed the wisdom down, and the confidence that they can, I wouldn't say give, but pass on to young women who have questions. And it's like, no, honey, that's normal. And this is what's going to happen. This is what you can do with it. I love it. It's like the women in the red tent. I absolutely
Yeah,
adore the intergenerational. I know I've enjoyed it in my life,
yeah,
mostly as an older woman,
yeah.
taking these younger women up and giving them confidence, which is that takes me to that question, is how does a woman build her confidence? How do you help women build their confidence?
I think it's partly it's, kind of where we started in this conversation, like, it's so easy to be so scattered and doing all the things that you think will move you up or you think someone will notice you, but if you focus on your core competencies and the things you do well, and that's the value you add, that's really a key, but also confidence waxes and wanes. It's not something you just get, and so you really need your support team to help you. I do a bunch of often free webinars. Sometimes I do them for organizations, but on perfectionism and imposter syndrome. And I talk about perfectionism, like a perfectionism mitigation team that you should be having. You should be having people around you and thinking about your resources to help you with that, because it's not a one and done confidence. Research suggests that the biggest gap gender gap in confidence is right when women come out of college, or if they don't go to college, but around early 20s.
Mhm.
And so we want them to level up much faster in their confidence. And I think it's those practices I was talking about, but also especially for young women, I always say that honor your questions. Your questions have value. I know as a professor over many years, I would say it's your questions that are helping us write history differently. You're asking the new questions that haven't been asked before. And if you're the only questioner in your workplace, well, find someone else who might be able to talk to you about that. Find someone who's maybe figure out who you need to know there, who can just be a sounding board for your questions and concerns, and know that things take time to change if you're trying to be a change maker, but that you can learn the skills and you can develop the networks to be influential in many workplaces. If your workplace is not something amenable to change, well, it's still a platform for your learning. It's
Yeah.
still a platform for you to test different things and always be thinking about when I get out of here, what's my resume going to look like? What's my network going to look like? What kinds of projects and skills will I be able to talk about? And how will I have contributed even a little bit to my purpose, to the values that drive why I show up every day?
Mm. And you talk about there's 2 things, this need for socialization. I think, getting through the pandemic and being so isolated and being on computers and being so isolated, and I do believe that as humans, we're social creatures, but especially I think as women, we garner so much just by talking to each other, right? That's that whole intergenerational. And that takes me to the thought that as older women, I'm an older woman, almost it's a I wouldn't say it's a need, but not a challenge. There's a word I'm looking for and I can't find it, but it's to reach into our communities. Any woman leader that's listening to this out here, or just a woman who's leading in their community, it doesn't mean you have to run
Yeah,
IBM, right?
right.
To be an elder in your church, but to realize all the wisdom that you have and that the girls, the young women that are in your immediate community that probably don't have the confidence to ask the questions that they really need answered, to
Mhm.
somehow reach out into that community, to make it available, to create an intergenerational community for these young women. I feel motivated, for the listeners out there
Yeah.
to look into that. Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think workplaces, really forward thinking HR can be thinking about creating some of those conversations at work that are about learning and honoring stories and that's part of the power, I found in this book I wrote is that I, for years have taught both undergraduates and working professionals about what women are up against. We know a lot of these things. I mean, the risk of sexual harassment and the penalty for being a mother and unequal pay and unequal access to promotion. And those things can be so daunting. But when you look at stories over time and how, you know, a career is full of chapters and full of triumphs and full of obstacles that you somehow navigate, and most people, don't get to run IBM, but can have very, very meaningful careers and have built resilience around navigating those obstacles. And
Mhm.
and it, it even starts young. I mean, young people have navigated a lot of obstacles and they're navigating a lot of fear right now. It's a scary world to be entering. So I talk to them too about even to young people, you're already a mentor, you're already probably somebody looks up to you. If you're
Right.
in college, it's a high school student. It could be a younger sibling. It could be someone on your athletic team. So how are you being intentional about that? And I would say to the older women too, to be allow yourself to be mentored by younger women
Yes.
is valuable as well.
I do love that, and I know that, a friend of mine works at Estee Lauder in upper management, and she has I wish I could remember the buzzword, but she has 2 young women in their early 20s that works for Estee Lauder that are her mentors.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it but she also has to she sends them out. She goes with them to movies. She goes and eats with them. She does the things so that she learns what that age group is into. I mean, it's also
Yeah.
for marketing her products, right? Yeah.
Exactly, it's so valuable in business anyway. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Amazing.
I like that idea too of the whole of kind of a whole life mentoring. Often the best mentoring I've got was some where people who recognize that I'm a whole human being, including being a mother, having those responsibilities at home, whatever your whole life mentoring looks like. I know we all need some boundaries at work, but to be able to see people in their humanness, I mean, we're the workplace is where we show up with other humans, for long periods of time and in a really fractured culture. If we can build that as a more positive civic space, as a space of some positive connections. I mean, again, I know there's always going to be workplace politics and hierarchies and all that kind of stuff, but we can show up for one another in better ways, I think. That's something I hope we can think about.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good way to kind of start to bring this to a close as a challenge that you don't have to it's not gaining following on Instagram or Facebook. That's not what you're talking about as
Right.
far as the relationships. It's really about that woman you pass in the hallway all the time,
Mhm.
or somebody you see at lunch maybe eating alone, or you see someone struggling, or you see somebody excelling and reaching across whatever fear that is, but to touch in with them and start to build, like you're saying, these relationships one by one. I'm learning in my own life that it's not publicity, it's intimacy. And these
Yeah.
intimate relationships are so much stronger, but you get so much more back from something like that than trying to spread your goodness and your coaching across, a field of people, even though it sounds like, that's what everybody wants you to do to be successful. But I think what you're saying is, no, these go deep in your relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, go deep and there's more people that you can connect with than you would realize. Somebody across, a few offices over, a few floors down in your building that maybe you interact with only on email. Go meet that person or ask somebody who is a higher up and who's someone you admire for 15 to 30 minutes of their time. They probably want to give it to you just to learn a little bit.
So this is really about relationships when it comes down to it. So how do people get your book?
Yeah, you can get my book in most places. I'm promoting it primarily on bookshop.org because it supports small bookstores. You can ask your own local bookstore to buy the book. Yeah, and you can find
Bookshop
more.
dot so if they go to bookshop.org, they can search for your book
That's right.
and get it there and give us the full title of your book.
Leading with Courage, a career-long guide for idealistic women.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can find out more at my website, jodivandenbergdaves.com.
Okay, and you're gonna say that slower for everybody, please, Jodi.
Sure.
Vandenberg Daves, and that's Daves.
jodivandenbergdaves.com.
.com.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
Well, we should be able to find you there, and then if you have workshops or consulting or coaching, they can get in touch with you there?
Yes, I run a women's leadership intensive, and there's a lot of self-paced education involved with that, which is valuable, or I do, like a coaching package for people, and I've been running some free webinars and courage conversations as well, so you can find that all on my website.
Website. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Dr.
what a
Daves.
wonderful conversation. Yeah.
Good, 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 good. I'm glad, and I know that we all have gained some good nuggets from this that we can take into our own lives. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks to our guest, Dr. Jodi Vandenberg-Daves, our coaching consultant, really teaching women how to balance work life, motherhood, and how to advance themselves in the workplace. I'm Angel Howard, your host on the Upshift. Thanks for joining us today. I love all of you guys listening in today. Want to give you nuggets to take back with you and to work in your home and your life and your workplace. You can find me at angelhoward.co or grab my book, Issues in Your Tissues, on amazon.com. Until next time,